Somewhere inside the Caja Magica, beneath the retractable roof and the Madrid sky smudged pink with dusk, a 20-year-old left-hander from the Philippines just did something that nobody in Elina Svitolina's corner saw coming. Not her coaching team, not the odds makers, and certainly not the thousands of fans who had watched the Ukrainian bulldoze her way through one of the best seasons any player her age has strung together in half a decade. Alex Eala, world number 44, ranked 35 spots below her opponent, stood at the net with her hand extended and something luminous in her eyes, while Svitolina stared at the scoreboard as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into a Kinderstory. They would not. To understand why this result cracked the tournament wide open, you have to rewind to January, to Auckland, where Svitolina kicked off 2026 like a woman who had been handed a secret about how the next 12 months would unfold and refused to share it with anyone. She dismantled Wang Xinyu in the final, 6-3, 7-6, claiming her 19th career title and immediately announcing that this season belonged to her in ways the previous ones had only hinted at. Her movement was sharper. Her serve placement had gained a surgical quality, finding the lines with a frequency that suggested something had clicked between her ears during the off-season. She opened the year 5-0. 5 matches, 5 wins, 0 sets dropped. The tennis world took notice. Then came the hard-court swing, and Svitolina did not merely survive it, she thrived. At Indian Wells, she put together one of those runs that remind you why this woman once sat at number 3 in the world. She navigated past Emerson Jones, handled the relentless physicality of Hailey Baptiste, and then arrived in the quarterfinals where Iga Swiatek, the reigning Wimbledon champion, the 4-time Grand Slam winner, the woman who had beaten her in 4 of their 5 previous encounters, stood waiting. It did not matter. Svitolina flipped the script with a 6-2, 4-6, 6-4 victory that left Swiatek visibly shaken. The Ukrainian's ability to absorb pace and redirect it, her patience from the baseline, her willingness to stay in rallies that other players would have abandoned 2 shots earlier, all of it was on full display. She reached the semi-finals in Indian Wells, her first there since 2019, and suddenly the narrative around her shifted. This was no longer a veteran hanging on. This was a contender, legitimate and hungry. By March, Svitolina's win total led the entire tour. 20 victories against just 3 losses. She had climbed to world number 7, her highest ranking since her post-motherhood comeback began, and the momentum carried forward. At Stuttgart, on clay, she demolished Evala 6-1, 6-0 in under an hour, then gutted past Linda Noskova in the quarterfinals before Karolina Machova ended her run in 3 tightly contested sets. Even in defeat, Svitolina looked like a player who belonged in the conversation for the biggest titles on the calendar. Madrid was supposed to be the next chapter. The draw was kind to her. A first-round bye, a manageable early path, and the kind of form that makes the clay feel like an ally rather than an obstacle. Everything pointed toward a deep run. And then there was Eala. If Svitolina's 2026 story was one of renewal and sustained excellence, then Alex Eala's was something altogether different, a story of eruption. The young Filipina entered the season ranked around 50 in the world, fresh off a 2025 campaign that had already rewritten every record her country had ever known in the sport. She had trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca since she was 13, absorbing the values of relentless work and tactical discipline that defined the academy's approach. And somewhere during the off-season, those lessons fused with a physical maturity that turned her from a promising talent into something far more dangerous. Auckland gave the first signal. Eala rallied from a set down to beat Donna Vekic in her opening match, then advanced to the quarterfinals with a brand of tennis that mixed aggression and patience in proportions that seemed beyond her years. Alongside Iva Jovic in doubles, she even toppled Venus Williams and Svitolina herself in a tie-break thriller, 7-6, 6-1, a result that, in retrospect, carried a certain foreshadowing. But it was the hard-court swing that truly detonated her reputation. In Dubai, she demolished Jasmine Paolini, the world number 8 at the time, 6-1, 7-6, marking her first top 10 scalp of the season and sending shockwaves through the locker room. At Indian Wells, she followed that with a victory over Diana Yastremska and then took down Coco Gauff, the world number 4, 6-2 before Gauff retired trailing 2-0 in the second set with an arm injury. Eala rode that momentum to the round of 16, picked up over $100,000 in prize money and 120 ranking points, and by mid-March, she had ascended to a career-high world number 29. The first Filipino player, male or female, to reach such heights. She was no longer a curiosity, no longer a feel-good story about a teenager from Manila with a nice backhand. She was a problem for every player on tour. Her left-handed game is genuinely awkward to face. The spin she generates off the forehand side moves differently than what most right-handers expect, pulling opponents wide to the ad court with a natural shape that forces uncomfortable adjustments. Her backhand, refined through years at the academy, carries both consistency and disguise. She can flatten it down the line or roll it cross-court with equal conviction. And there is a composure to her that belies her age. Watch her between points. She does not rush. She does not fidget. There is an economy of emotion that suggests she has already processed whatever just happened and filed it away. It is the kind of on-court demeanor you might associate with a player 10 years older. Madrid was a test of a different kind for Eala, though. Clay has not traditionally been her strongest surface. Her 2025 record on the red dirt was modest, 2 wins and 4 losses, and while she had shown improvement, the surface demands a patience and a willingness to construct points through longer rallies that can challenge an aggressive baseliner still learning to modulate her intensity. Her first-round draw against a qualifier offered a chance to find her feet, and the potential path through Elise Mertens and beyond required her to prove that the hard-court confidence could translate onto slower, grittier terrain. And this is what made the collision with Svitolina so fascinating from an analytical standpoint. On paper, it was a mismatch. Svitolina's entire game is built for extended rallies. She is one of the best counterpunchers in the history of the women's game, a player who thrives on turning defense into offense, who can absorb your best shot and send it back deeper, heavier, more awkward than what you delivered. Her movement is preternatural. She glides along the baseline with an efficiency that makes hard-hit balls feel like invitations rather than threats. On clay, where the ball sits up a fraction longer and the surface rewards patience, Svitolina's style becomes even more effective. She makes you play one more ball, then another, and eventually most players crack. Eala did not crack. What unfolded on the Madrid clay was a tactical chess match that revealed just how much the young Filipina has grown in the past 12 months. From the opening game, Eala established an intention to dictate play, stepping inside the baseline after her serve and looking for short balls to attack. She knew, or her coaching team knew, which amounts to the same thing, that allowing Svitolina to settle into her preferred rhythm of deep, grinding rallies would be a losing strategy. So she disrupted. She changed the tempo constantly, mixing in drop shots and sliced approaches that pulled Svitolina forward, where the Ukrainian is least comfortable. She targeted the Svitolina backhand with heavy topspin to the ad court, exploiting the natural advantages of her left-handed delivery to create angles that a right-hander simply cannot replicate. The first set was tight, brutally so, a knife fight contested on the margins. Svitolina's returning was immense early on, neutralizing Eala's serve and forcing long baseline exchanges that seemed to be tilting the momentum her way. There were moments when it looked like the veteran's experience would overwhelm the younger player's ambition. But Eala held. She held when the rallies stretched past 15 shots. She held when Svitolina found her range and began painting the corners. She held because she had learned something in the past year that no amount of coaching can fully teach. She had learned to trust herself under pressure. The pivotal moment came midway through the first set. Eala, facing a break point that could have handed Svitolina a decisive lead, produced a forehand passing shot that clipped the line and left the Ukrainian frozen mid-split step. It was not merely the quality of the shot that mattered, it was the timing, the audacity of choosing that particular stroke at that particular moment. It sent a message that Eala was not there to compete politely. She was there to win. The crowd inside the arena was split in its loyalties, but there was a sizable Filipino contingent making themselves heard, a phenomenon that has become a feature of Eala's matches throughout 2026. At Indian Wells, the Filipino fan support was so vocal that ESPN devoted a segment to it. In Madrid, that energy intensified. Every time Eala won a big point, a roar erupted from the stands that seemed disproportionate to the size of the group producing it. It was the sound of a country, an entire sporting culture, really investing its collective hope in a single 20-year-old and her Wilson racket. Svitolina, to her immense credit, fought with everything in her arsenal. Her movement in the second set was extraordinary, covering the court with a fluidity that made you forget she is 31 years old and has logged hundreds of thousands of miles on that body. She found ways to extend rallies even when Eala tried to shorten them, chasing down drop shots and flicking them back with interest, refusing to concede easy points. There were stretches in the second set where Svitolina looked like the player who had beaten Swiatek in Indian Wells, the player who had won Auckland without dropping a set, the player whose 2026 season had been a masterclass in sustained excellence. But Eala had an answer for every surge. When Svitolina tried to flatten her backhand down the line, Eala anticipated it and was already moving to intercept. When the Ukrainian went for depth and weight of shot, Eala absorbed it and redirected with a wrist snap that sent the ball to unexpected corners. And on the crucial points, the 30-all rallies, the breakpoint opportunities, the moments that separate comfortable victories from heartbreaking defeats, Eala played bigger. Her first serve percentage in the pressure moments was remarkable, and her ability to find angles on the return that destabilized Svitolina's service games was the kind of tactical precision you associate with veteran clay court specialists, not a 20-year-old whose career record on the surface has been, at best, a work in progress. The third set was where the emotions spilled over. Svitolina saved 2 break points in her opening service game with aces, a rare weapon for her, but one she deployed when it mattered most. Eala responded by holding to love, hitting 3 unreturnable serves and a forehand winner that drew gasps from the crowd. The set stayed on serve until the 7th game, when Eala constructed a rally of 22 shots that ended with a backhand cross-court winner that caught the tape and dribbled over. Svitolina challenged. The ball was in. The break was sealed. Serving for the match at 5-4, Eala faced one final moment of reckoning. Svitolina pushed to deuce, then earned a break point of her own with a forehand that clipped the baseline. The young Filipina stood behind the baseline, bounced the ball twice, looked up, and hit a serve out wide to the deuce court that Svitolina could only float back. Eala stepped in and hammered a forehand winner into the open court. Deuce. On her first match point, she missed long, the only sign of nerves she showed all afternoon. On her second, she simply refused to lose the rally, tracking down everything Svitolina threw at her for 14 shots before the Ukrainian netted a backhand. Game, set, match. Eala dropped to her knees on the clay, her hands covering her face. It was the kind of reaction that tells you the player understood the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. This was not just a victory over a top 10 opponent on clay. It was a statement of identity. It said, I belong at this level, on any surface, against anyone. For Svitolina, the loss stung in the way that only losses to younger players can. When you are 31 and you have won 19 titles and you have climbed back to world number 7 after giving birth and taking time away from the sport, and a 20-year-old with a left-handed game and a quiet fire in her eyes beats you on the dirt in Madrid, you feel the weight of every year. It is not about physical decline. Svitolina's fitness was not the issue. It is about the shift in the competitive landscape, the emergence of a generation that has studied your game, absorbed your strengths, and found ways to neutralize them. Eala knew exactly what Svitolina wanted to do, and she simply would not let her do it. The tactical lesson from this match will be studied by coaches for months to come. Eala demonstrated that Svitolina's counterpunching brilliance can be undermined not by overpowering her, many have tried that and failed, but by varying the rhythm so relentlessly that the Ukrainian never gets to settle into her preferred tempo. The drop shots, the sudden changes of direction, the willingness to come forward behind sliced approaches, the use of angles that only a left-hander can create. All of it combined to produce a game plan that treated Svitolina's greatest strength as a vulnerability. If you can make a counterpuncher react rather than respond, you strip away the control that makes their style effective. The broader implications for both players' seasons are significant. For Svitolina, the loss in Madrid will cost her valuable ranking points and, perhaps more importantly, momentum heading into the French Open. She had arrived in Spain as one of the form players of the year, and departing earlier than expected forces a recalibration. The question now is whether she can recapture the relentless consistency that defined her first 3 months of 2026, or whether this defeat will linger in her mind the way losses to young risers sometimes can. History suggests she will rebound. She is too experienced, too mentally tough, too deeply committed to her craft to let one result define her trajectory. But the road back is a little steeper now. For Eala, the road ahead is illuminated in ways it has never been before. A victory of this quality on this surface against an opponent of this caliber changes the conversation entirely. She is no longer a player who excels on hard courts but struggles on clay. She is a player who can compete anywhere, against anyone, and find a way to impose her game. The Filipino fanbase, already passionate beyond measure, will only grow louder. The sponsorship interest, already substantial for a player from a country with no professional tennis tradition, will intensify. And within the locker room, where reputations are built not on rankings, but on results against the best, Eala has just added a line to her resume that demands respect. Madrid will remember this match for a long time. Not because it produced fireworks or controversy, but because it captured something essential about the sport, the moment when a young player stops being a prospect and starts being a threat. Svitolina walked off the court with her head held high because she has nothing to prove to anyone, and she knows another opportunity is always around the corner. But Eala walked off with something more valuable. She walked off knowing that the ceiling she had imagined for herself was lower than the one that actually exists. And in tennis, that realization is worth more than any trophy. The clay of Madrid saw a story written in its red dust, a story of a veteran who gave everything and a young woman who simply gave more. Svitolina's run ended, but her season is far from over. Eala's run continues, and nobody knows where it will stop. That is the beauty of this sport, the reason we keep watching. The reason we sit in those stands or lean toward our screens with our hearts hammering. Because on any given day, on any given court, the impossible becomes possible. And on this day, in this city, a left-hander from Manila proved that the future of women's tennis speaks with a Filipino accent.